Hold on.
Are we on or no?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the campus of Hagerstown Community College. This is our second Facebook Live series, and tonight we're going to be talking about financial aid. I'm Kevin Crawford. I'm the Director of Admissions and Enrollment Management here at HCC.
My name is Mike Martin, and I work as the Director of Advising and Registration, and it's nice to be back, ready for round two.
I'm Stephanie Latonicus. I'm the Student Financial Aid Manager.
This went very well last week, and we're excited about this week as well. We have a lot of questions here at HCC about financial aid. I know at any college campus, financial aid is always a big topic. So let's just review a little bit about what we talked about last week. We want our new students to make sure they start applying for admission. That's the first step when looking to get started here at HCC. Apply for admissions. You need to get your acceptance letter, your student ID, and your login, and we will send that out to you. Those students who have already applied and they don't know where that is, you can reach out to the admissions office here through email, admissions@hagerstowncc.edu, and we can send that to you. But once you get started with that application and you have a file here at HCC, you can start the financial aid process, and that starts with the Fafsa. And Mike, you want to talk about some of the basics with the Fafsa?
Sure. It's certainly nice to have Stephanie here with us this evening. She is my go-to a lot of times in the financial aid office. But before we get started, and I know we got a lot to talk about tonight, I have to follow up on something from last week, Kevin. I know a lot of us out there had heard you mentioned that you were a member of Phi Theta Kappa. And I want to bring up a date to you, February the 26th, 1995. Does that date ring a bell?
No.
Okay. And it's certainly not the day that your mom gave you detention in high school. I know we've talked about that before.
Right.
But I want to bring out something. I did a little research this week, and it turns out that Kevin Crawford was inducted into Phi Theta Kappa, our National Honor Society here at HCC, on February the 26th, 1995. So to commemorate that, I put a little certificate together for Mr. Crawford here, and I want to present this to you. Maybe put it in your office someday.
Thank you. Thank you.
But he is a member of Phi Theta Kappa, and he was telling the truth with that. So on the financial aid stuff this evening, the biggest thing that I think, if there were a couple things that everyone needs to be aware of with financial aid, basic things with financial aid, is that you have to make sure, number one, that you do the right financial aid for the semester that you're taking classes. When I say that, right now we're kind of approaching the start of our summer session. We're also going to be getting ready for our fall semester as well. So students that are taking classes and wanting to utilize financial aid for the summer will need to do the 2019-2020 FAFSA for the summer semester. For those students looking to take fall classes, you're going to want to focus on completing the 2021 FAFSA. So there's two different ones out there right now. And again, depending on what semester, if you want to come to do both semesters, then you're going to want to do both FAFSAs that are out there. And that's critical because I can't tell you how many times a student will say, well, I did the 2021 FAFSA and it's the summer 20 semester. I did the right one. And it turns out that it really wasn't the right one, and they got to go back and do the 1920. Now, with that being said, there are some critical things when you complete the FAFSA that you have to make sure you get right. When you apply to Hagerstown Community College and you do the FAFSA, one of the biggest things that we see, and I see it more often than I thought I would see, is that students get the Social Security numbers wrong. They'll flip a number. When you fill out HCC's application, the Social Security number on HCC's application will link up with the Social Security number on the FAFSA. And if you happen to just flip two of those numbers, we can't connect the application with the FAFSA, and we can't bring it into the college, which creates the first problem. The other thing that happens, and for a lot of students that might be thinking, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else next fall, now I want to come to HCC, you have to make sure you list our school code on the FAFSA. HCC has a school code, and it's critical that that code gets on the FAFSA so that we can download. The other thing that happens a lot of times too, students will think that filling out the FAFSA, they'll get an email from the federal government, the Department of Education, and they'll think they're done, and they'll want to come out and register for classes right away, thinking, oh, I'm done the whole process. Well, that actually starts the process because it's the first stage when a lot of times students think it's the last stage. Once we bring the FAFSA in, it can go to processing stuff, or students can get flagged for verification. And I think you want to talk a little bit about verification. So
yeah, definitely. I know that, like you were saying, a big issue is with the social security number. Either they sometimes flip a number, or oftentimes, because it's not required for the admissions application, they don't put it on there at all. And that does create a lot of issues and slows the process way down for a lot of students. The FAFSA, I like to talk about, I've talked about it a lot. It's a lot like filing your taxes, right? You have to gather all kinds of information, financial information, demographic information. It wants to know who your parents are they married, how many siblings you have, what your income's like. And the Department of Education has a quality control process, and they select a certain percentage of all applications for verification, like you were talking about. And that means that the student has to turn their financial documents, their tax returns, into the institution, so that we can say, oh yeah, Johnny did make $25,000 a year last year. It matches what he put on the FAFSA. He's good to go. So I know verification can seem intimidating. It's a lot of paperwork. Sometimes people think, oh no, I must have done something wrong to get selected, but they really haven't. It's just the quality control process.
And we use that term a lot. You're flagged for verification. And if you will see flagged, oh my goodness, I did something wrong. It's not. And it's not we're picking on you. It's a random process that students are selected for verification. And Mike made a good point that your social security number is extremely important for that application. But so is your major. You need to have a major on your application, because for that FAFSA to download, the SOC and the major are very important things to have on file. And I want you to understand, we said this a little bit last week, financial aid and the FAFSA sometimes are just thought of, well, I don't need to fill that out because maybe the family makes too much money. The FAFSA is done for all types of aid, whether it's a scholarship, whether it's a grant, or whether it's a loan. So all students should do the FAFSA, because you may be applying for a merit-based scholarship, or there may be a need-based scholarship, or maybe there's Maryland state money or state money that you're applying for. Right. So the FAFSA is extremely important to do, and it should be done by all students. I mean, I cringe to think of students in the past and the money they've left on the table because they just did not complete the FAFSA. And
it's the thing is, it's a free application. It's just a matter of taking some time to do it. And I said last week I did it with my son recently, and it takes less than an hour. I had some questions, and we still got through it, but it's not as intimidating as what it seems. The other thing that I want to make sure it's clear out there too is, when you complete the FAFSA, it's a free application.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, there's some websites out there that want to charge people to do it, and they're scam sites. Yeah. So. Right. On our website on Hagerstown Community College, if you go to the financial aid page, there are useful links. We do give the link to the correct FAFSA, the Department of Education website for students to use. But if somebody's going to charge you to do the FAFSA, you're on the wrong website.
Right, and it is just FAFSA.gov. So anything that has the .gov trailer, you can typically trust.
Yep. And on typical days in the administration building here at the college, if you're around the financial aid office, you'll hear FAFSA a lot, but you'll also hear some other types of terms that are used that a lot of questions come about. And there's a lot of special circumstances that we have. There's income reduction and dependency override. Steph, do you want to talk a little bit about the income reduction and dependency override?
Sure. I know that the FAFSA collects information about a static time period. Your 2017 federal tax returns for the 1920 FAFSA, and your 2018 tax returns for the 2021 FAFSA. And I know with this global pandemic, a lot of people's situations have changed. A lot of people are on unemployment now. They've lost their steady income. And the financial aid office is allowed. We have the authority with the correct documentation to make a professional judgment. We can look at an income reduction appeal and use that information that's submitted by the student, like copies of their unemployment insurance receipts and that sort of thing, to look at their current income as opposed to what income was submitted on the FAFSA. So that's a really great thing that not a lot of people know about right now. We try to talk to students in particular situations, especially that this does apply. We can do an income reduction, but it's a pretty lengthy process and it has to be done at each school that you're applying to. So I oftentimes tell students to only really to go through the professional judgment income reduction process at maybe their top schools, that ones that they're really thinking about attending, because it's pretty lengthy process. There's another special circumstances situation that's a dependency override, because a lot of students are in situations where maybe they're homeless, or maybe their parents aren't in the picture for whatever reason, and they can't submit parental information on the FAFSA. If they're not married, over 24, a military veteran, or any other reason that would make them independent, the FAFSA wants parental information. So we have situations we're aware of that sometimes students can't get their parental information, and that's when they can complete a dependency override. And those links, there are forms on our website that students can complete and submit to our office.
Yeah, and that's tough. I mean, there's times where, students will come in and they'll say, hey, I did the FAFSA. I'm 22 years old. I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own bills. Haven't really talked to my parents, unfortunately, in a long time. I don't know how to get that information. I'm really trying to do this on my own, and that's just tough. But it's nice to know that there's those things that students can take advantage of if they have to.
Definitely.
Let's really kind of get to the meat and potatoes of the FAFSA. What we're really looking at, what's looked at, and EFC's talked about a lot, the expected family contribution, and that really is an important part of being based off of what you're going to be eligible for as far as aid goes. So Stephanie, you want to talk a little about what EFC is?
Sure, because we throw that around a lot. In all financial aid offices, I think if you go into a college campus at all, you're going to hear EFC. And it's expected family contribution. And it is an index. It's kind of like your credit score. It doesn't really mean anything outside of financial aid, but it's heavily used. And all that information that the student and the parents submit on the FAFSA goes through a complex congressionally mandated formula. And at the end, the FAFSA spits out an EFC. And that's the score. It's kind of like the credit score that we use to help determine their aid eligibility. It determines how much Pell Grant they're eligible for. It kind of, in combination with the cost of attendance, helps determine need. Does a student have financial aid? And cost of attendance can vary significantly from school to school, from HCC to a four-year public to a four-year private. The difference is astounding. Like if the cost of attendance here at HCC for tuition and fees, room and board, and books maybe is $10,000 a year, at a public institution it could be $25,000 a year, and at a four-year private it could be $50,000 a year. So somebody who goes to a four-year private institution with a $50,000 cost of attendance could have an EFC of $10,000 and $40,000 in need, but not all institutions can meet unmet need. But if you have a $10,000 EFC at HCC and a $10,000 cost of attendance, you might not have any technical need, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be eligible for any financial aid.
Right. Just to talk about EFC with this, the EFC number and the amount of Pell that you can get is pretty much the same no matter where you go, which is what makes Hagerstown Community College and community college in general more affordable. There are situations where students get certain amounts of Pell money that not only covers the tuition costs here at HCC, but students then are in a position that they have a potential refund that they can use. This doesn't even talk about loans. This is just free money that students are eligible for that not only covers the cost of the classes here, but the students can then use the money that's left over to purchase resources, books from our campus store. And then even beyond that, if that doesn't, max out what they're eligible for, then students are eligible for a refund check halfway through the semester. So,
that's where we get the calls all the time. Hey, you all sent me money back, so there has to be some error here, and I need to bring it back in. It's just the Pell Grant money goes a lot further at a community college than it does at a four-year college.
Oh, yeah.
So that's very, very important.
And here at the college, you definitely, if you have a refund, you get it. I know, Kevin's owed me a lot of money over the years, and I don't get it.
Not paid.
You have not paid.
Okay.
The college does pay, so that's a guarantee. That's just certainly not a guarantee getting money from you.
Right. So we have when financial aid, we have, of course, that the Pell Grant, there are scholarships, and there are loans as well. So that Pell Grant we kind of hit on, and one part of the Pell Grant I want to talk about is our dual enrollment Pell program. So we have a very, very good early to college program, our Essence program, and we're one of 44 colleges in the country that were chosen to do a dual enrollment Pell Grant program. It was an experimental program where our high school students who attend a public high school, who we have a written agreement with, they can apply for financial aid in our Essence program or our middle college. And that's kind of confusing sometimes, because we'll say to students, you become eligible for that Pell Grant when you can show us a high school diploma or a transcript showing you finished high school or a GED. Keep in mind, we have that experimental dual enrollment Pell Grant program where high school students can apply for Pell and possibly receive it for the Essence program. So that's an experimental program. So those of you who have an interest in the Essence program, there is an opportunity to get some dual enrollment Pell there. So then there's also student loans. If we're talking about scholarships in a little bit, loans is what we like to try to stay away from. That's the form of aid that you're going to have to pay back with interest. But we do have opportunities for students to take out loans here at the college.
Yes, we do. Students who are enrolled at least half-time in a degree-seeking program can borrow student loans. We always, like you said, Kevin, encourage students to borrow very conservatively, just enough to cover their actual bill, usually, if they have to, and to really be mindful of how much it's going to cost to pay those back. Because I know a lot of people who have student loans that say to me later, oh my goodness, I really shouldn't have borrowed as much as I borrowed. I could have gotten by with a lot less.
Right.
So loans are great, and if it's the only way that you can finance your education, I think it's a good investment, because education is a wonderful investment.
Correct.
I
say to students in high schools all the time, and if anyone's ever heard my presentations, which sometimes are very boring and dull, but I always say you do not pay the price to go to college. You pay the price for not going to college or getting the training you need, or a trade, or the military. In 30 years, if you're unhappy, you should have went and did something to put on that resume beyond a high school diploma. Invest in yourself now. If college is that path, we're here to help. If it's a military, if it's a trade, go ahead and do that now.
I've used that same saying, Kevin, that it costs you more if you don't go to college than if it actually costs you to go to college. And the one thing I want to clear up a little bit too with loans, and we hear this all the time from students with Pell money, with loans, et cetera, is when you do take out loans, you have to at least be in, you said halftime, it's 6 credits, minimum of 6 credits that you got to be in. When we talk about Pell money, a lot of times students will say to us in the advising office, I got to register for classes so I can get my Pell. I got to register for 12. And they don't realize that for Pell money, it's all prorated, so to speak. If you're taking 12 or more credits, you get a certain amount of money. You're taking 9 to 11 credits, it's a different amount, slightly less. If you're part-time, which is 6 credits to 8 credits, you get a certain amount. And then, to be honest, if you're in 1 to 5 credits, you get a certain amount. So again, the biggest thing to talking about federal money is loans are 6 credits or more, and that the Pell money can be adjusted according to how many credits that you're taking.
That is correct, Mike. Thank you for pointing that out.
No problem. The other thing that can happen too, and again, for those students that are taking classes in the summer, if you're taking classes in a fall or a spring semester, I will tell every single student out there, our advising staff can help you, but if you're in a position where you're taking classes and you have financial aid, Pell money, loans, scholarships, anything like that, and you need to make an adjustment in the semester. You're 3 weeks in, and I'm not sure what I need to do. I need to get out of this class. If you have any kind of financial aid and you need to make an adjustment to your schedule, just don't do it. until you talk to financial aid first. And make sure that it's not going to impact you one way or the other. It's hard when you already drop a class and then you contact financial aid to find out, oh, my aid's adjusted. Now I actually owe money to the college instead of getting a refund. And we see that a lot. That's a lot of the times the things that we have to troubleshoot on our end with advising and financial aid. So.
That is correct. And it is really important because a lot of the financial aid is enrollment based. Like it differs from Pell Grant to Maryland Grant because Maryland Promise requires full-time enrollment.
Correct.
And some of the other Maryland programs require full-time enrollment as well. It's really important, and we talk about this a lot, is that sometimes students don't understand how important attendance is in earning their financial aid. We front load financial aid. We give it to them up front, but they have to actually attend the semester to earn it. It's not just free financial aid. You have to earn it. You have to attend class.
And there could be scenarios a student pays the aid back because they did not attend their classes.
Right, and it's very important if you are registered for a class and then you decide that it's not going to work out, you're not going to be able to attend, that you go in to WebAdvisor or self-service or call the registration office and let the college know that you're not going to be able to attend and not show up, right. Because that does that leads to problems.
Correct. And you alluded to Maryland Promise a little bit. Let's talk a little about the Maryland Promise program. And just like we talked about last week, it is extremely important that college students check their emails. I know we have a lot of teenagers now that like other forms of communication. Colleges are going to communicate with you through your college email account. So it's extremely important that we're checking our emails. But the Maryland Promise program is for students who want to be full-time in college. And currently, if you've graduated within the last 2 years, that'd be 2020 high school graduates in the state of Maryland, 2019 high school graduates, homeschool graduates, private school graduates, public school graduates, you can apply for the Maryland Promise program. As long as you had a 2.3 high school grade point average when you graduated, if you're getting into become a full-time student at a community college in a credit-bearing program, working towards an associate degree, or a vocational certificate program, or a sequence program that leads to licensure, you can apply for the Maryland Promise program. Maryland Promise, if you're a two-parent household, and the income is $150,000 or less. If it's a one-parent household, $100,000 or less. If you meet that criteria, the state of Maryland will basically say to you, we'll cover your tuition to attend a community college. They're basically making community college almost zero to pay. I mean, it's almost a free guarantee for you to go to a community college. You need to keep a 2.5 GPA while you're enrolled at a community college. And it's a last dollar award. And that's something that's thrown around a lot with scholarships, is that last dollar. What does that mean? Well, that basically means if my tuition to go to Hagerstown Community College for 1 year is about $4,000, and I'm awarded a $1,000 scholarship through an organization, that's on my account. Maryland Promise then will pick up $3,000. If I have a scholarship that's going to pay $3,500, and my tuition was $4,000 for the year, Maryland promises that $500. I need to pass my classes. I need to do what the Maryland Higher Education Commission is asking of me, and that's very important to keep that. If I receive a Pell Grant, I'm not eligible for Maryland Promise. Yeah. I'm using the Pell Grant.
Right.
Well, you referenced a 2.5. For those of the students out there, 2.5 is actually a BC average. Just to kind of put that into context, you have to manage that BC average. Looks like we got a question coming in here.
Yes. Hi, Mike. Kyle wants to know, when is the next start date for our CDL truck driver training program?
Okay, the truck driving program we have, obviously at this point with truck driving, it's very critical for the students in that program to actually be able to get in the tractor trailers and actually get to the range and so forth. We have truck driving programs slated to start in the summer. However, again, that's all going to be at the discretion of when we can get students back on campus and get back on the range and in the trucks. But there is a CDL class that's going to be offered for this summer, if you're interested. If again, contact our advising department at advise@hagerstowncc.edu, and one of our advisors can work with you on the specific times that it's offered at this time.
Yep, that's good. And like we were saying with financial aid, the checking the email is very important. Not just Maryland Promise, but even we go for Maryland part-time grant or State of Maryland scholarship. The state is going to send you communication for those of you like for Maryland Promise through the email that you put on the Fafsa, and they're going to want you to submit everything through something the state has called MD-CAPS.
That's right.
And they're going to ask you, hey, submit this or this or this. So like the Promise program, Maryland Promise, people reach out to us, but it's a state-run program. So you have to be checking your email on that. And anything with us at HCC, we can send that through the student email. So that is extremely important that students are checking their email. Or like you said, Mike, when they do the FAFSA, they'll think, I'm done. There's nothing else to do, but there's something waiting for them. They just haven't checked yet.
Yes. And that's, and you know, your aid's not ready to be put on your account until you get that file complete date.
That's right.
And I can't tell you how many students will think that they're done, think that aid's on the account. I mentioned this earlier, and it turns out that they're in a position that they've gotten flagged and they have to bring in documents, and they don't bring them in, and their aid's not done. The aid's not on the account to cover the tuition. They don't have aid at that point to purchase textbooks, and the aid's really not done, and those students put themselves in a pretty bad position. So make sure that you're checking your emails to follow up. The whole process with financial aid, we were talking earlier, it can go pretty quick and it can be pretty seamless, but it can also drag out if you're not checking your email, turning in your verification documents. The other thing that happens sometimes is students get flagged the first time, we do the corrections, we send it out, we download it again. You think the second time that we get it, we're done,
Right.
but they could get flagged for something else. And I know that's frustrating, and students will say, you know, why didn't I have to turn that in the first time? Well, the first time you didn't get flagged for that, you got flagged for it this time.
Yeah.
So, and again, this whole process can take, it can take probably as quick as 2 to 3 weeks, but it can also take 7 or 8 weeks.
It can.
And that's where, you know, when we're talking about fall classes, even at this point, we mentioned last week that the tuition due date was July the 23rd. Now, right now here in May is when you need to start the FAFSA process. You don't want to wait.
Already.
Yes. So, Kevin, looks like we got a question.
Kevin, Jane wants to know if a parent's income is over, two-parent income is over $150,000. Are they eligible for Maryland Promise at all?
They're not eligible for Maryland Promise. It's got to be $150,000 or less for a two-parent household. If you go to the Maryland Higher Education website, everything's listed there. Or the easiest thing is go to our website and type Promise in the search button. It'll take you to our link for Maryland Promise. We answer as many questions as we can on there. But Maryland Higher Education is the one who sets those out. So we kind of direct you to their link so that you can find the answers.
Well, and while she might not be eligible for Maryland Promise, there are legislative scholarships that she can apply for on the Maryland Higher Education System website. We have a lot of students in Washington County that get legislative, senatorial, and delegate, state senatorial and delegate scholarships. So that has a kind of extensive application process, but students who do have incomes of over $150,000 a year can still apply for those legislative scholarships.
That's great to know. That's good to know.
Stephanie, Johanna would like to know that once the FAFSA is submitted and they receive notification for required documents, where can they submit those documents after printed and signed?
Well, they would need to scan those and send them to the FinAid@HagerstownCC.edu email right now, or they can fax them to our fax number, and somebody can put that fax number in the comments because I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Come on, Steph, you got you're like you got to remember all the numbers in there. Yeah, you got it.
Store so much in there though. Or they can mail them to our mailing address. Somebody is coming in at least once a week to process mail. So any of those documents, any of those ways that
and you know, the other thing that we've tried to help students that have emailed our advising department recently, if you're not in a position and you need to email the documents and you will need to scan them, many times smartphones at this point have certain apps. You can download an app called Adobe Scan for free. Also, I know on iPhones in the notes section, you can take a picture and it actually gives you the option to scan a document, and then you can upload that document into an email. So sometimes that might be the easiest way out there. Johanna, if you have the ability and a smartphone that you can take the pictures and email, again, we can post it in the comments, but FINAID, FINAID at HagerstownCC.edu is where you can send those documents.
Just make sure you're redacting any kind of really sensitive information. Like, don't ever email social security numbers, block those out, take them off the forms completely. Don't send anything with a social security number via email.
Yeah.
And the fax number for financial aid has been posted in the comments.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Mike, Katie would like to know more about our Take Two program. She's heard about it, but I know that we haven't publicized it yet. Can you give us a precursor?
Sure. Our Take Two program we're still in the works of finalizing some things, but at this point, we're going to be working with students that may have attended another college and are looking to maybe come back to HCC. And the point of the Take Two program is to try to get students done in 1 year. If you were at a 4-year school and you've accumulated 24 credits at this point, and you have the ability to send us a transcript and you want to come to HCC for a year and try to finish up that degree in a year, our advisors will be able to work with you guys on that. We do require, in addition to that, those 24 credits to have a 2.75 GPA. But it's going to be a great opportunity once we get all the details and we unveil it. But we think it would be a great opportunity, especially for students that may have been to a 4-year college this year and are now thinking twice about going back to that 4-year school next year because we could be remote.
You see this a lot too, Mike, and I have for the number of years we have worked here. The number of students walking around this county or this area who have over 20 credits and they just didn't go back and they think, well, I can't do anything. You can earn your associate degree, and the importance of that is great to whatever you want to do. And that's what we want to get those students back. If you went somewhere and you have 30 credits or whatever, and you're thinking, well, I just dropped out, come back to a community college, finish that associate degree. It may spark an interest for you then to go on and get your bachelor's degree. So I think it's a great program. We're really excited about it.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more next week in more detail about transfer things. But Kev, you brought up a good point. We have so many students sometimes that we talk to that we can't emphasize enough how important it is to get the associate's degree. I see so many students that get so close, 40, 50 credits, and then they transfer to a 4-year school and they don't finish there.
Right.
And suddenly they have all these accumulation of credits and they don't have any credential to show to their name. And we're going to talk next week about reverse transfer and situations like that. But if you are a student that's been at a 4-year school and you're thinking twice about going back to that 4-year school based on what we're dealing with this pandemic right now, and you're thinking about HCC, be on the lookout for our Take Two program. We could, obviously help you out if you fit the criteria of those 24 credits in the 275.
Right. And I always think of the family that goes through the financial aid process. They do everything and they find out I'm just not eligible for anything to attend HCC. We're not eligible for that grant or that scholarship. We want you to apply for our foundation scholarships because there's merit-based scholarships there. There's community-based scholarships. It's very important that we apply for that. But the big thing that a lot of students don't know about, and they should because they just don't maybe do the research, is our Nelnet payment plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a great plan that if you register for classes early, you can lock into a payment plan where you can pay your tuition off over 5 months.
Yeah.
So if my tuition for the fall is $2,000, I can set a payment plan up that I pay, just the $400 a month all the way through, and there's my tuition going. Maybe August, September, October, November, December, there's my tuition. So it's not like you have to bring the wheelbarrow in and dump the money in the finance office. It would be payment plan's a great option if you're not eligible for anything.
Oh, you push that wheelbarrow around the farm quite a bit, don't you? Just a quick thing, and I know we got another question coming in, but to talk about that payment plan, students have to have their tuition paid for in full, or they have to be on a payment plan to be locked in and be protected in their classes. There's no interest on the payment plan. I know that's something that'll surface. Do I have to pay interest on it? There is a $25 fee that's charged to a student to utilize that payment plan each semester, which is a great opportunity. As you mentioned, the earlier you get in, the better you are. You don't have to pay anything down if you do that payment plan early. If you happen to wait a little longer, you might have a percentage to put down and less months to pay, but it still gives you that opportunity not to have to pay anything at once.
It gives you that option on the next step sheet when you apply. Pay attention to that. It gives you that option.
Stephanie, Jane wants to know if it's too late to complete the FAFSA for fall classes. She's thinking about a March 1st deadline and seems confused by that.
Well, March 1st is the preferred deadline for Maryland state scholarships and grants, like Maryland Promise and the Educational Assistance Grant and the EA grant. But the federal financial aid, like Pell and loans and SEOD, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Like,
there's the lingo. There's, financial aid has the language.
He was looking at me and I was like, oh, I'm using acronyms. So, but the federal aid doesn't have that same March 1st cutoff date, and neither do our HCC scholarships, because we're a community college and we know that sometimes our students apply a little later in the process. In the summer, our foundation scholarship application is open until June 30th as well.
Yeah. And just to talk about our foundation office, I know we talked about federal money a little bit. We talked about state money. We have a wonderful foundation here, headed by Ashley Whaley, Dr. Whaley, and the foundation does incredible work and provides lots of scholarships for students to attend here on campus. And the stories behind the scholarships, I know we speak about those, but a lot of students are very thankful for, as Kevin mentioned, both need-based and merit-based scholarships. And there's lots of scholarships that the college provides. So a shout out to our foundation office for all that they do as well.
And the tuition due dates that you talked about, Mike, and we talked about this a little bit last week, you'll see the college post a tuition due date. That's when tuition is due for students who've already registered for classes. That's not a deadline to register for classes. You can continue to register for classes up through the add drop period of when classes start. It's just after that tuition due date, tuition's due within a few days of you registering for classes. And it seems like I get a question about that a lot in admissions. What's the deadline to register?
Yeah.
And I always say you need to register now because you want the classes that are available. Yeah. You want to get into some good payment plans. Don't procrastinate and wait and see what's left over.
We've had a lot of emails come in the past couple of days at advising. I think students have been a little worried, thinking, oh my gosh, I got to be registered on May the 7th, which is today. That's when tuition's due for summer classes. But if you, and again, I throw this out there, if you're a student that registers today, as of right now, your tuition would be due in a week. I know we say a couple days, but right now for the summer, it's due in a week. If you register tomorrow, it would be a week from tomorrow. So
we have several sessions for the summer, right?
Yes, we very much
May
do.
26th is when the first session starts. And what are the other sessions, Mike?
I don't have the exact dates on me.
But it's later in the summer.
There's a date in June. There's a date, I think, July 13th, I think, is when our second 6 weeks starts.
So people could register for those classes
completely up until when they begin.
Those dates.
Another question coming in?
Yeah.
Stephanie, we have a great question from Marissa. Marissa will be dually enrolled between HCC and Shippensburg.
Okay.
She wants to know if she uses her Pell grant at Shippensburg, can she still apply for an HCC Foundation scholarship to pay for HCC classes?
Well, typically, if Shippensburg is your home school, then that's the school that you're supposed to get all your financial aid from, because they process their financial aid. You're technically a Shippensburg student who's also attending HCC through a consortium agreement. I know in the past we have given some scholarship money to consortium students, especially if they're in those selective admission programs or in our nursing program that also has a component with Frostburg that we kind of have some crossover there. But yeah, you're still welcome to apply for a foundation scholarship. We'll review it, and we would have to send that information back to Shippensburg and let them look at your package at Shippensburg to make sure it fit in there, everything was okay.
One thing we want to harp on too here, and real quick before we get to the next question, and we mentioned this a couple times before, but when students take classes here with financial aid, they have to be in classes that are part of a degree program.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier that students had to be active in a degree. You not only have to be active in a degree, but you have to be taking classes in that degree for financial aid to cover it. You can't come here and pursue engineering and take business classes and think financial aid is going to cover the business classes. So another question, Kevin.
Kevin, we have clarification question. If a student has already completed the FAFSA but plan to attend another school, what do they have to do to have the FAFSA relate to HCC?
You need to add HCC to your FAFSA, and that's in April and May every year we have that. Students plan to go to XYZ University, and now they changed their minds and said, I'm coming to Hagerstown. They need to go into their FAFSA. They need to add HCC to the FAFSA. They need to make sure they have a major on file here with us and their social security number, so the FAFSA will download with us here at the college. You'll hear my staff who go out and do outreach into the high schools. We always tell students, add HCC to the FAFSA. You never know, you may come here. If there's space to add us, because if you do it before March the 1st and you're a high school student, it makes you eligible for Merit Promise, and there's a lot of things out there. But all you need to do is go in and add us to the FAFSA so they can download here at HCC.
Yeah, and that brings up an important thing, Kevin, too, is that of logging into the FAFSA.
Yes.
You need to remember your FSA ID. And if you're a dependent student, your parent has to have an FSA ID too. And you need to store that in a secure place, or memorize it, or put it in a password safe or something like that, because you're going to use that FSA ID over and over again as your signature with the federal government. If you do subsequent FAFSAs, you're going to need to remember that FSA ID. If you do apply for a loan, you're going to have to use that to sign your master promissory note. If you go in to look at your financial aid history, your federal financial aid history in the federal database, you're going to need that FSA ID to log into those systems. So it's very important to have your FSA ID safe, somewhere that you can memorize it, and don't ever share it with anybody, because it's your federal electronic signature.
Yes.
And to go back to that point, all you have to do, Steph mentioned, you just go in and make the correction. You don't have to do the whole FAFSA over again. You don't have to start from scratch. You just go in and you just simply add our school code, you save it, and you go from there. So it's simple. Another date, if you have pen and paper out there and you want to write a date down, I'm going to go ahead and throw this date out. I know we're way in advance for it, but October the 1st of 2020 is when you can start filling out the financial aid for next school year already. Yeah. So if you want to jump on things early and you're a person that likes to hit the ground running, remember October the 1st is always the day that you can start filling out FAFSA for the next school year.
Got any more dates for us?
I know, Mike. Wow. I'm impressed.
Mike,
I've thrown a lot of dates out.
We're trying to worry about May right now, and you're worried about October the 1st.
Yeah.
Mike, I want you to touch base real quick about a rate agreement.
Yes.
Because that's a very important way a student can really help themselves out with tuition.
Yeah. Our county rate agreement program is wonderful. We take students that may live in out of state and work in Washington County. A lot of the employers in Washington County have signed in to be part of our rate agreement program, meaning that if you live out of state, you work in Washington County, and you provide a letter on company letterhead that's dated 2 weeks before we get the letter and before the semester starts, and it's signed by your employer, we can move your rates from out of state to in county for that semester. The biggest thing that we want students to remember with this is it's only for that semester. Students have to do that rate agreement letter each and every semester to get those in county rates.
Right.
So if you get it for the summer, you have to do the letter again for the fall, and it has to be in before our classes begin.
One of the last things I want us to cover here, and Stephanie, I'll let you cover this,
sure.
is satisfactory academic progress, SAP. And once again, we throw it around a lot. SAP.
It's a whole financially, it's a whole new language.
What that means for a student to stay eligible for financial
aid. That's right.
aid.
Like I was saying before, you have to attend your classes to earn your financial aid. Well, you also have to pass and complete your classes to get to keep your financial aid going forward. So at HCC, that means maintain a 2.0 GPA. It's really important to maintain a 2.0 GPA, not just to keep your financial aid, but to be able to graduate, because you can't graduate from HCC without having a 2.0 GPA. You also need to complete at least 67% of your classes. So that's probably what, if you take 12 credits, you have to complete at least like 9 or something like that.
Yep.
So you you have to maintain these as minimum standards. And if you don't meet them, then you're going to have to get into a situation where you might have to appeal and tell us why you didn't make a 2.0 GPA and why you weren't able to complete your classes. And there's another category of SAP that is max time frame. You only have so many credits to complete your degree, because a lot of our associate degrees here at HCC are 90 credits. So you only have up to
Or 60 credits.
And you only have 90 credits to complete them. So if you go over 90 credits and you haven't gotten your associate's degree, you're going to hear from us, or you're going to have to appeal that situation.
And when we talk about completing classes, to go back to that 2.0, it is a C average. The 67% completion, students will ask, what does it mean when I complete? A completion of a class is an A, B, C, or D. While we don't like you to get Ds, because that hurts your GPA, it is considered completing a class when you get an A, B, C, or D. Ws don't count as a completed class. Withdrawals, I'm sorry. Ws, withdrawals, F grades, those kind of things will not count as a completion.
And D doesn't count for some programs.
Correct.
Like nursing and radiography, that D is not considered passing.
Another question.
Mike, can you talk a bit about payment plan options?
Yes, we had mentioned earlier the Nelnet payment plan. At this point, as an example, if the tuition due date is coming and you can pay all your tuition, certainly, and you're in a position to do that and you're not utilizing financial aid, you can pay. If you need to access and utilize our Nelnet payment plan, hopefully somebody can post a link to the Nelnet payment plan in the comments right now for the student that had the question. Again, the payment plan gives you the opportunity, if you get in, you may have to put a percentage down on the payment plan, and then you may be locked into payments each month. Usually it's at the beginning of the month sometime. As I mentioned earlier, there's no interest on the payment plan, the Nelnet payment plan that we have, but there is a fee associated with it. It's a $25 fee. Currently, right now, for summer payment plan, you can set it up for fall. It's a 20% down that you pay. The $25 fee will typically come out within 10 days out of an account, and then you put the 20% down, then you have monthly payments at that point. Those percentages change as the weeks change. And it's a simple form that you can go online and fill out, and it's kind of a step-by-step process to actually set that payment plan up.
And as we kind of wrap up here for our second Facebook Live series here, just a couple of reminders and things that we went over. If you're using financial aid and you're going to drop classes or change your schedule, always contact the financial aid office to make sure there's nothing that's going to happen that's going to hurt your account or something that you're going to have to pay back. Always make sure you're checking your college email. And utilize Hawkeye, the little orange box you'll see at the bottom of our website. Hawkeye will answer a lot of your financial aid questions. I know Charles Sheets, our director of financial aid, and his staff have done a great job of loading Hawkeye with a lot of questions. But if you go in and ask Hawkeye the questions that you have about financial aid, it'll answer it for you and show videos and some how-to videos on things. Very, very valuable resource for us.
You know what we do next week?
What?
I'm always thinking some ideas. It'd be nice to see you dress up like Hawkeye.
Okay. All right.
Maybe we get the mascot costume out and maybe have Kev dress up as Hawkeye. That'd be an interesting thing to see.
Why not you? You look more like a mascot to me.
We had a good time. I tell you what, these Facebook Live things, they go quick. We appreciate all the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we're excited for next week. We know that transfer questions always.
Yes.
We always get questions from students about transfer. We're excited
We're
excited to bring that to you next week. And hopefully, if you know people out there that you've talked to that have questions about transfer and how transfer works, we encourage you to reach out to them and tune in next week. We'll be happy to answer a lot of those questions.
And like I said before, working long enough, we get transfer questions all the time.
We do.
And transfer gets a bad rap. And I think we can answer a lot of those questions next week. So next week's going to be extremely valuable to anyone out there who has a question about transferring, anyone has a question about going to community college and transferring on, and we'll be able to answer those. I just think that's a question that we get all the time. How does that work?
So make sure you join us next week, 5 o'clock, again next Thursday, for a discussion about transfer and the transfer process. We hope many of you can join. And write down your questions this week.
Yeah,
Maybe you might get to see Kevin and Hawkeye next week.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you
Yeah,
very
Stephanie,
much
oh, yeah,
for being
thanks
here.
for
This was
having
great,
me.
and we're thankful for my certificate now that I will put up in my office. And hopefully we answer a lot of your questions. As Mike said, share it with your friends.
Yep.
This is our second series. We'll be back next Thursday, 5 o'clock, Facebook Live, to talk about transfer.
Shout outs again to Dr. Olgelati, our Dean of Student Affairs, for the questions, and our LT and Public Information Office for making this possible this evening. So we'll see you back next week, everybody.
Good night,
See ya.
everyone.
Bye-bye.